You got to think about it like this. There's a reason why they make certain moves. The organization in the during the season they went and grabbed a solid cornerback. Although it was on the waiver wire, he was a solid cornerback for the Broncos, and he just got caught up in the rapture of the turnover of a roster, and we ended up with him. They draft two cornerbacks in the draft. That signals something to me. I don't know about y'all, but that signals something to me. I think if at worst they're preparing for the worst in case they can't get a contract done with Jaylon. So I mean, to me, I never want to talk about another man's pocket. I hope he gets his money. I really do. I think he's worth it. But it looks to me like they're signaling, hey man, we can't get you at a certain dollar amount, then this is what it is.
Yep. I think we're gonna end up in another Roquan Smith type situation where the player values himself here, and the organization values him a little bit lower, and because of the lack of production that we like to see from a number one cornerback, which is turnovers. It can come from forced fumbles, as we know from Peanut Tillman with the peanut punch, or it can come from interceptions. But there has to be you have to have some game-changing plays. It can't just all be about coverage all the time, because we also have the two guys from last year, what was it, Jaylon Jones and Blackwell. Josh Blackwell. Those two guys also played well in coverage last year as just cover guys, without a pass rush. So, and then you bring in two rookies, and then you have Jeff Okudah. Not Jeff Okudah. Shout out to Don Burr. Ojemudia, yeah. Ojemudia come here. So it's just like, they're preparing for competition. It's going to be a lot of competition in cornerback room. And I can see a situation where, we allow him to walk, or we can trade him and get something for him as opposed to just letting him walk away. That's what I would like to happen. If it's a contract issue, I say we get something for him.
Hey, Trip, is that kind of what you were alluding to when you sent me that message today?
That and Bojack.
Go ahead and take it there then.
Okay, well, this is somewhat of a combination of topics that we're talking about here. So, being that I am that motherfucker, I'm looking at what Samuel was saying there at the end about Jaylon Johnson, and just put him in the group of all players as the business side of the football game. Now, yes, they are human beings. Yes, they are people with feelings and families and got to get their paper, that get hurt, that put it all on the line for our entertainment. I get that. But when Mr. Johnson came out and said, hey, man, I'm a father before I'm a football player, I understand that as a human being. As a father, I get it. But if I'm a general manager, it's like, really? Huh? Because if you think about any job interview you go to, you can't tell the boss sitting there, it's like, I'm a father before insert position here. That's kind of understood, but not something that you vocalize, because every other father on that team and mother, that works on that staff or in the front office is making sacrifices to have their ass at work and be down with the team. If they have to, miss, little league or graduations, shit happens. It's not like the little girl is sick or nothing and she's 3. She don't remember your ass no way. You be all right. I want to see you in Hallis Hall on the field. And, we already know about the turnover situation that he doesn't get. And as far as assets going, like Eddie Jackson, who's going into his 30-something, year season coming off of an injury, when do players become assets as far as not letting them retire in a position and just fade off into the sunset? whereas some of the fan base want them to. It's like, well, he deserves it. He's earned it to retire as one organization or whatever the fuck, as opposed to it's like, all right, this Eddie Jack, just as an example, got maybe a year or two of solid production left. Let's maximize on that and get somebody young in there. Jaylon Johnson is not old, but we know what he is. We've seen his ceiling. He's peaked as far as I can tell as a player. He's not adding on anything to his game that will be beneficial to us going forward. We were a shit team while he's been here. He was just floating at the top of the toilet. Now we want better shit. You know what I mean? And he ain't that. So why pay him and not flip him as an asset and bring in young talent that these young GM scouting backgrounds are going to identify that fit their system, that will be under rookie contracts, that will, be young and mold with the team going forward, as opposed to being an old piece trying to not really fit. So as far as assets, I use those two as an example because that's what we're kind of talking about now with the Bears. But for any team, when a guy gets older and still has some value, it's like, do you want to keep him? And sentimentally, for some reason, I don't understand because I'm not emotional like that. I'm a motherfucker. But you keep him, or do it's like, all right, we can get this draft pick or whatever from this team for this guy. All right, let's flip him. Take that Madden mentality. It's like, let's just look at the numbers and go by that.
Well, one thing you don't want to do, and I'm going to defend Jaylon here because I heard you say, you thought he's topped out. I beg to differ with that. I'll tell you why. I think Jaylon, after studying him, I study every fucking Bears player, man. Everybody knows I study him hard. Jaylon's, to me, coming from a cornerback, I'm a cornerback. I think Jaylon Johnson is a footwork specialist away from being a top tier cornerback. Jaylon Johnson falls, he stumbles a lot and gets behind in coverage. If you watch him close enough and watch enough games, you will see that 2 or 3 times during the game. He will slip and he will stumble. Why? Because I haven't seen him. Most people when they're working with footwork specialists, they usually put that shit out on YouTube or somewhere. Yep. Somebody's going to see that. And that's one person I haven't seen go down to Florida. Is a world-renowned footwork specialist that everybody goes down to in Florida. I've never seen Jaylon Johnson there. Not to say that he's not working with somebody out in California. He could be and just not posting. But to me, the flaw in his game is his footwork is not where it needs to be in order to be an elite corner. The second thing is when he's in phase often with the receiver, but he's playing through the ball and not turning and making a play on the ball.
Never.
So that's, to me, that's why he doesn't. He comes up and he's 4 years into the game and only has 1 interception because he's not really playing the ball. He's playing through it. Once the receiver gets it in his arms, he's playing with the knife trying to go through the receiver's arm to knock the ball out, or the hammer trying to go down over the top of it. One or the other, but you're gambling. You don't want him to get his hands on it in the first place. And if you play the ball the right way, and you get in phase and you flip the right way, and you can do that and stay on balance, you can make a whole lot more plays. And so if there was a knock on Jaylon, I'm betting as a coach, and you're looking at him on film, that's what they're looking at, and they're saying, hey, you know what, man, this guy, 4 years, and he's still having bad footwork problems, and he's not making plays on the ball, all that kind of stuff. It's probably hurting him as far as a contract goes. You know what I mean? Maybe they feeling like they could get somebody that can coach up better than that. You would expect him being in this kind of defense to be able to because he's going to be looking at the ball more than he is chasing them because it's his own defense. You're kind of looking at the play. But I didn't see a whole lot of playmaking. Even I know it was his first year in cover 2 doing 4-3. But I expect if they keep him here this year, I expect him to make more plays. And if he doesn't, I guess to me that would justify, hey, we can move on and get a better playmaker for that kind of money. So that's just the way I'm looking at it. But I do think he can really improve. He hasn't hit a ceiling. If he worked with a footwork specialist and somebody that really specializes in that, there's a couple of ticks above where Jaylon Johnson is that he can get better.
And now,
Um,
since you wait before you go, Samo, just to finish the thought, what are your thoughts on the retirement versus keeping or trading aspect of older players?
Depends
Nomad.
how productive they are
I didn't really get that, man. I
or
really
their value in the locker room.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I didn't really get that concept.
You
I
didn't
get
what?
it. I
All right,
get
go
it.
ahead,
I get
Samo.
what Tripp is saying. I get what Tripp is saying about, players are being assets. And, if they don't have as much value to us right now, we're not a contending team. This is what Tripp is saying. Like, we're not a team that's about to contend for a championship this year. There's a team that might be a corner away, or they might be a safety, a playmaking safety away, a Eddie Jackson
Sam, what
away.
makes you say that, man?
I mean, what makes me say that?
Yeah.
But no, I'm just saying there could be. I'm not saying that there is for sure, but I'm saying there's a team out there that could feel like, all we need for this defense right now is a playmaking safety. If we get
But
it,
you
if we had a
you said we
playmaking
won't
safety.
compete. You said we won't compete. What makes you say that?
For a championship this year, man, knowing the field, looking at the competition around us, there are other teams who've been together longer. I expect us to fully compete, like we're a championship, contending for a championship. However, you got teams like Philadelphia, who's an established team. You have the 49ers, who is an established team in the NFC, who have been together longer, who have been through those playoff fights, who are going to do better when it comes to that point in time. I expect the Bears to make the playoffs this year. Now, when we go up against one of those two teams, I think both of those teams have the upper hand, of course, because they've been there and they've been there longer over the past few years. So they've been fighting this fight to win that championship over the past couple years. So that's what I'm saying with that. When I say that, I'm not saying that we're not going to compete this year. I fully expect us to compete like a championship team because of the coaching that we have and the type of players that we have. But as far as another team goes that feel like an AFC team or someone, I can't even think of one right now off the bat that might feel like they need a playmaking safety, and we're sitting here with Eddie Jackson, and we're not there this year, and we can put another young guy there and get him up to par for when we are ready to really compete for that championship. He's ready. And then we can gain an asset for Bojack, and give him an opportunity as well to, go win him a championship because he's played on a lot of bad Bears teams as well. That's the other thing about it.
I can't buy that, man.
You can not buy into that.
I'm not.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that happening. I'm definitely buying to that, man. If we're not going to utilize players, it's not just about. If we're not ready right now, we might as well gain an asset. If we can get a second round pick for Eddie Jackson this year, man, I would jump all over it. I would jump all over it and, allow one of these young guys to compete or pick up someone off of waivers or something, until we can draft someone next year. But I fully expect something back for our players. I don't want to just allow players to just walk out of the door and, be an injury away from, valueless. Eddie Jackson has a lot of value right now. Hell, we were just talking about the corner. He has a lot of value right now. So Jaylon Johnson has a lot of value. Yeah, Jaylon Johnson has a lot of value right now as well. But just not as valuable to us as he might be to someone else.
Everybody's ready to flush this year. Like
I'm not flushing.
I keep looking at the roster. I keep looking at highlights and watching people's tape, and I'm watching these guys thinking about these guys collectively, and I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck don't we got? What the fuck are we doing? Pawning off our good players to somebody else. What if we competing this year? We want to keep the motherfucker. But I don't like. To me, Philadelphia doesn't have anything we don't have except for maybe an exceptional pass rusher. Maybe we can go get one of them before the season starts. The Neil Hunter's out there, but I do like the guys that we have in the locker room.
Okay, all right. Let's take the hold on. Let's take the Bears out of it. Hold on, let's take the Bears out of it.
I
I
can't,
understand what you're saying. No, I get what you're saying. Hold on. Time out. Time out. Time out.
brother.
Time out.
No. I had something to say.
Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time
Don't do
out
that,
on the field.
Trip. Don't do that.
Time out on the field.
Trip. Let me finish what I got to say.
All right. Good.
I mean, I can agree with what anybody says about, okay, we might still need a year to get to a championship level team. But I'm looking at the roster right now, and I'm not seeing nothing I don't like. And I don't think we need to take a backseat to no fucking body. And we definitely don't need to be having to pawn off players to get assets to go into the draft next year. I think the way they competed last year with the addition of the talent this year, I don't think we take a fucking backseat to nobody. I don't care what nobody say.
Okay. Now let's take the aspect of being the Bears in this situation out of it. Let's say you are a team that is not competing for anything, but you have an older player who can be an asset to be tradable. At what point would you be willing to say, yeah, all right, let's go ahead and trade him for an asset? Or it's like, no, he should, be able to retire here.
Well, I don't think about this. I don't think about it that way. Most guys don't retire on the team that they started with. I mean, most guys, they just don't. But when you're talking about players and assets and things like that, and the team, you'll have an idea of what kind of team you got moving forward by the trade deadline. When you think, right? By the trade deadline, right? And so that's when you start considering, okay, can we pawn a few assets or a couple of assets to get some kind of compensation for later on? I think you everything that you've been doing thus far leads to the trade deadline. Either you're going to get rid of some guys or you're going to add some guys because you like what you're seeing. Is that about right?
Well, but the NFL thing is, you have to have those discussions beforehand. You can't wait till the trade deadline gets here and be like, oh, well, what's this guy worth? It's like, well, let's look at our roster. Going forward, who do we know is not part of the future long term? Maybe the 30-year-old safety coming off an injury, and maybe the possibly reached his plateau or not guy who's wanting a second contract. And from the business aspect of it, outside of the locker room, coming to the management, it's like these are assets, human assets indeed, but assets. And it comes to a point, it's like, all right, future, this is 2023. We should be competing as the Chicago Bears for the division this year because it's in such a shape that it is, but as Sama was saying, we're not really competing for the NFC yet. And even if we were competing for the NFC, we're just not there yet. The team has to gel, has to learn, has to mature. And so, all right, cool, we compete this year. All right, so going forward, how many years do these guys have left, if we're talking older guys? And it's like, all right, well, we may be competing for the Super Bowl in 2025. It's like, all right, are we going to re-sign this guy to another long-term deal because he's been with us so long and been good? Or do we trust our GM who's a scout and be like, look, this guy's good, but he's been here for how many years? And we won what with him? Okay, granted, we have a better team around him now, so maybe he can flourish, and we hope we see that. But if it does going forward as this team matures, he's not going to be there. And now we got a young guy who's manning that spot. As going forward, the cap situation, not that it's a problem, but you always got to watch the money. I learned that from my homie, Mr. Weinstein. And, Jaylon Johnson is going to take some cap space because he's going to want to get paid, which he's earned. But it comes to a point, it's like, look, dog, you are what you are, and we think it's worth this amount, like Roquan, like Monty, and you want this, is like, but we can flip you for that. It's like, yes, you have the experience and you are a good player, but going forward, building a team, sometimes you've got to let good players go for the assets to flip them to bring in better players who can be great as opposed to just good. And so it's not, just pointing just at one player specifically, but I'm looking at these because these are our examples right now.
And the Bears didn't draft him. They didn't draft Jaylon Johnson. They didn't draft him to play in this cover 2 defense. So we don't even know if they feel like he's a fit for that defense. Nomad, you pointed out a lot of things that you saw in his game. Yeah, I see the same thing when I watch him. He's always like he's behind the receiver every time he's in coverage. He's behind the receiver. He never turns his head around. He bats a lot of balls down, but he never turns his head around to make a play because he's always a step behind or something. But he recovers well somehow, and he's able to bat a lot of balls down, which is cool. But I would like to see that man turn his head and jump and intercept the balls, because there has been opportunities for him to do that. You also made a good point about him not having great footwork. All right, Nomad, and there are a lot of good videos. I follow the Footwork King and a few other guys who put out all the videos of the players that they train throughout the offseason. I haven't seen Jaylon Johnson in any of those videos. I haven't seen him post any of those videos, which is also concerning to me, because if that's a flaw of yours, are you putting in the work to correct this flaw? Because it's the 4th year now. It's the 4th year. If you've had footwork issues for 3 years now, you haven't, worked to correct that, which is a totally correctable issue. Totally correctable issue, man. There's so much that can be done in one off season to correct your footwork. That's concerning for me as well about him, man. I like the guy. Like I said, he spent he wanted to spend the summer with his daughter. I understand that. His daughter could have come. He has a lot of money, man. The man could have brought his daughter to Chicago, right? What was up with that? That's how I felt about it.
Hey. We don't know about baby mama situation.
I'm just saying, like that not an option too, dog. I'm just saying, dog.
Out of Pepe.
Bring baby girl to Chicago, man. Let us spend some time in the Shy too. She can see Papa in the Shy.
You know what? It's footwork is like music, man. Everything needs to be on the beat and on the one, and it's when you all over the place like his, man. It's all off key. His feet are all over the place, man. But if he ever sits down or gets together with a good footwork specialist, he'll see everything he's missing. So he's got a lot of meat on the bone as far as his upside. He can get a whole lot better, but it's up to him. But now Eddie, I'm gonna tell you something, man. Eddie, I don't see Eddie the way everybody else do. He's an injury away from being a liability, but so long as he's healthy, he's an elite safety in the league, and I think one of the better safeties in the league. I think one of the best. And so as long as you can keep that dude on the team and he can stay healthy, you definitely want that dude on your team. But
that makes him valuable, though. That's what we're saying, is that makes him valuable. I absolutely agree with that. And that's why he's so valuable. And he's more valuable to another team than he probably is to us. Another team that feels like they're an Eddie Jackson away from, winning the championship or having an elite defense that could compete for a championship. I know you said, what's the difference between the Niners and Philly and us? And I know we have a talented team, but the difference is continuity. That's what we're missing. We don't have the continuity that those teams have yet. We have a lot of guys that are talented, but they haven't learned to play together yet. We have a lot of young guys on our team too. So
Sam, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. You know what's getting at me?
What's up?
Because everybody fast forwarding into later on into the end of the season and just assume we ain't gonna do shit and let's just start getting rid of assets. And that's the shit that eats away at me, man. That shit eats at my fucking soul. It eats at me because I want to just see this shit play out. And I'm telling you, per that roster and per what I see on tape, we not really missing nothing. There's nothing no team got that we don't have outside of a Patrick Mahomes. Other than that, we right there at the same level with every fucking body else.
We have the talent at every position. I agree.
I want to see this season play out. I think come game 6, 5, 6, 7, I think this conversation gonna have a different tone. But
hold on, Nomad. Let me ask you this though: are you thinking from the perspective of wearing your general manager hat, or are you still, thinking about your locker and the locker room perspective of things?
Oh no, definitely locker room. Definitely locker room. From the player, I think as a player first. And then I start thinking coach. Then I start thinking GM. But it always starts there because that's what I relate to the most. You know?
And that's why you feel the way you feel. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good way. That's why it makes sense. See, that's the difference. You look at the player perspective first. And of course, as a player, you would hate to see fucking Eddie Jackson leave the team and get traded. You know, if I'm Tremaine Edmonds, I would hate to see Eddie Jackson get traded. Like, what? We gonna trade this dude and I just got on the team. So I understand that. Yeah. So from that perspective, yes. But from a GM perspective and looking down the road is where I think Triple R was coming from. And looking, you know, he's responsible for not this year's team. He's responsible for the team next year, the year after that, and the year after that. So if I can put together a pool of assets and go and draft another Eddie Jackson next year, then I feel like he might be in better shape by doing so. Going ahead and, you know, trading him this year, re-ing up next year and seeing what we have then.
Hey Sam, what's the chance? What out of what's the shot? At least one. What's the Vegas odds? At least one Bears player right now currently on the team is going to get a chance to watch this show.
You say it's going to get a chance to watch this show?
Odds.
The odds. It's up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say you was say Justin and you was watching this. What you think he'd be saying?
He'll be saying that, yeah, he understands that, you know, football is a business. That's the business side, hopefully, because that's just the business side of football. We see it happen. We see players get dropped when they have high contracts and they've been
Turn your mic
productive.
off, Trip. Turn your mic off.
We've seen players who've been extremely productive get dropped the next year just because their cap number is too high. That's just the business side of football.
No, I'm talking about y'all, him hearing y'all counting them out for the season.
Counting who out? Oh,
Y'all
we're not counting them out. I'm not counting them out,
out,
dog. You can't stop saying that, man. I ain't counting them out. Stop saying that. I'm not counting the Bears out, man. What I'm saying is it's a fight. They're gonna fight for this year. You know, I'm not going to put those lofty expectations on those guys right now. I can't expect them to just come out and win a championship this season with the team that they have assembled right now. I guess I don't even want to put that out there for them to expect that of them. But would I like to see it happen? Yes. Could things just fall into place? Yes. A lot of things have to fall into place. We have to remain healthy. Is probably the number one thing. That's because, you know, there are some spots where we just lack a little depth, you know, maybe on the offensive line. After the starters, we don't know who we have that are going to come in and fill in and just be as formidable as, you know, who was already there at the starting position. But other than that, I mean, yeah, we're going to compete, man. We got a good team. We're going to compete all year long. Like I said, I expect us to make the playoffs. And when you get in the playoffs, it's anybody's game. You know that, man. We've seen that. We've seen that last year. The Jaguars went from worst to first, won the first round game, and, you know, they could have had a chance to win that second one.
Cincinnati had a way worse team than we got, and they ended up
Cincinnati. I knew you were gonna go there.
I'm just saying, man. You know what? We're gonna tangle about this. I'll tell you right now, you better come to the Nomad Network. Nomad Live and Nomad at Night, because I'm gonna be tangling with their motherfucking ass all season until I get them. I'm gonna pin all their ass down. They gonna understand. We're gonna be competitive this year, and you can't count us out of nothing. You can't.
Now let me answer that question. If a player heard this, I would hope that they would think that I was being fair, and that the criticisms that I'm putting forward are not something that I'm making up or trying to over exaggerate or, you know, make some kind of hyperbole about. You know, this is what I'm seeing. These are just basically the knocks in your game. This is your game. You know, if you can't understand that and you take it personal, you in the wrong business, dog, because you got to have that mental as well. And so, And so I'm not saying they can't do it. I want to see them do it. I want to see them succeed. And as far as trading players and not being personal, it's not personal. Even if I knew a guy, it's like, Poles knows all these guys, but eventually he's going to have to trade them. He's going to have to cut somebody. So it's not personal. But when I have those criticisms, it's what would be better for the team going forward. Maybe not better for that individual player, but it's about the Chicago Bears, not about insert player here in the overall, aspects of it.